Hello. So this one's about acronyms, breaking them down. Basically, there's lots of acronyms that we deal with when we're dealing with HCP, send support, all of that kind of stuff. And I mean a lot. So this is the first part. There's going to be many of these, and I'll build upon it. I don't want to overwhelm you with too many at once. So this is the first lot of acronyms that you're probably going to come across. And as you go deeper into the process, you'll come across more and more, which we'll try and cover later on. But firstly, let's look at what we've got here. So we'll look at the most used acronyms here. It's impossible to go through all the acronyms. Sorry, I'm really struggle with pronouncing that word that I use, but we will go through the most commonly ones used. So SEN, special educational needs. So that is the needs that our children, young people may have that are a barrier to them accessing learning. Special educational provision, SEP. So that is provision that is needed for them to be able to access education. So SENCO, Special Educational Needs Coordinator. So that is a coordinator within all schools that is responsible for overseeing things like SEN plans, attending meetings and making sure that all SEN children's folders and files are up to date and have all of the plans, etc., that need to be in place. Individual education plan. So some local authorities have an individual education plan which identifies, smaller outcomes, breaking down the bigger outcomes that might be in HCP plans, and also is used at the SEN support level to monitor all progress in SEN people in school. Educational psychologist, so EP, and that is a person who would come out and do an assessment usually around the social, emotional, mental health and cognition and learning, and what additional needs and support that a child or young person might need. Speech and language therapist, so SLT. So a speech and language therapist is a person that would come in and do a speech and language therapist assessment, looking at communication and interaction needs. This is more than verbal language. It looks at understanding of language, use of language, social interaction, body language, emotions. So there's a lot more into what a speech and language therapist would actually do in an assessment than we actually realise quite often. Occupational therapist. So we've got the functional side of occupational therapy, which is looking at fine and gross motor skills, and we've got the other side of occupational therapy, which is the sensory, where they look at the environment, the impact that noise, sound, light, all them kinds of things that have on us. So we're looking at senses and the interoception and proprioception. Emotional based school avoidance, and I know some people don't like this term, but it is still a term that's well used out there. So EBSA is the acronym, and emotional based school avoidance is a term that's often used when children struggle or are unable to attend school due to some other needs or unmet needs. Severe learning difficulties. This is a term that's used for those, so SLD, which is used for children that have very, very significant learning difficulties and need extremely significant support to actually be able to access learning. Specific learning difficulties. This is where, so SPLD, this is where we're talking about things like dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia, things that where our children are capable of working at age-related levels, but they have a specific area or a specific need that really impacts this, that needs to be supported. So avoidant restrictive food intake disorder, so ARFID. This is where a lot of our children struggle, specifically around autism and sensory, and it's where they have difficulties with texture and tastes, and have quite a minimal amount of safe foods. So ACEs, which is adverse childhood experiences, which are often used to explain different experiences that can impact trauma or impact our children, and that may make a difference on how they are or what they're struggling with. Education other than in school, so EOTIS, you might know or hear of it as EOTAS, but quite often it is described and understood as EOTIS nowadays, and it's for those children that it is inappropriate or unsuitable for provision to be made in school at this time, so they would have an EOTIS package where education is delivered either in alternative provision or at the home. Cognition and learning, so C and L, usually it's the funny it's not the and, but I've put it this way. So this is one of the four broad areas of need that is often used in an EHCP, which is used in SEN, that we look at to identify needs and provision for children. Same again, communication and interaction. This is another broad area of need that we often look at to identify needs and provision, and is used in EHCP plans. PNS, which is physical and sensory, again is another section of the plan where we're looking at physical and sensory needs, usually around occupational therapy and physio, that might impact and are included in the EHCP plan, a child's access to learning. And the last four broad area of need, which is known as SEMH, which is social, emotional and mental health, which is another area of need within an EHCP plan where we look at a child's social, emotional and mental health needs, and how these impact learning and what provisions they might need to support them. GDD, which is actually global developmental delay, and that's usually a diagnosis that's given from paediatricians, and it's significant delay in development that some children may have. So EWO is an education welfare officer, and people often come across these when they've got a child who struggles with school attendance or is unable to attend, and the local authority or the school have reached out to the local authority and the educational welfare officers become involved. And the last one I've got on this bite-sized look is AR, which is what we all know as an annual review, which is conducted every 12 months or within 12 months of the last annual review, and basically it's reviewing the EHCP plan to still make sure that it is still relevant and specific to the child's needs and provision at the time, and to see whether outcomes have been met, whether we need to look at outcomes again, or whether, what kind of progress has been made.